All right, welcome to another edition of the Black Table Talks. And today we have another attorney extraordinaire, Jazmine Greer. And again, somebody else that I personally do business with in and out the courtroom. And I wanted to bring her on to help give some good information to potential investors out there, people doing business, people thinking about doing business, especially in real estate. Business owners, small entrepreneurs, but introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Jazmine Greer. As Akeem stated, I'm a real estate attorney. I've been practicing for about 12 years now. So, just really trying to keep it going and hoping that I can continue to help people, real estate mostly, but I also do a couple of other areas after 12 years. I've done a lot.
Yeah.
Real estate is my passion.
All right. So I know that, a lot of people think attorney is attorney, a lawyer is a lawyer, is all under. And what I've learned over the 20 plus years of doing business that attorneys, everybody think it's just simple as criminal and civil. Yeah, those are the two major categories, but then you have so many other subcategories and specialties that attorneys specialize in. What are your specialties?
Well, like I said, I do real estate mostly, but I also do personal injury. So it's like car accidents.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of med-mal, but that would fall under personal injury.
Malpractice.
Okay. Yeah, medical malpractice. But for the most part, I do personal injury, real estate. But because I've been practicing 12 years, I actually started with criminal, bankruptcy, and family law. Those were the three major areas I practiced at first. Sometimes I will take on a criminal case. Yeah. And I'm glad you made that distinction. A lot of times people will meet me and they'll find out I'm an attorney and say, oh, I hope I won't need you. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't just do criminal. Yeah. If you can use an attorney for everything. Mm-hmm. You ever want to own your own business, own your own house, or a plethora of things. Law touches every subject matter. Okay. So I'm glad you made that distinction because I think a lot of times people think lawyers just do criminal law.
Yeah, right.
But we do everything.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, most criminal attorneys don't really do civil business stuff at all, right? But a lot of civil, they might mess with a little, like I know you will go in, if I get in a car accident or get a speeding ticket, you can go and represent that for me, right? Yeah. But that's not really what you do on a regular.
No. And after, I grew up in East Cleveland. Yeah. So coming from that type of environment, and being the first generation to do what I do, I wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. So fresh out, I was like, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to, just change the world with this criminal law thing. Yeah. And then I realized that it took a lot from me because of my passion. Mm-hmm. And so I'm helping people try to navigate through this criminal justice system, but they've probably done something wrong. And for me, that wasn't that gratifying. It's nice to make sure that when it's the good guy that's getting hemmed up by the system, that you can navigate him through it. Yeah. But when it's that guy that really robbed the place, I didn't feel good about helping him. Or that guy that really raped that little girl, I didn't feel good about that. Yeah. So now I pick and choose who I help when it comes to criminal. Because early on, I mean, I was a bulldog. They called me that, you know what I'm saying? So if I took on a case, I'm filing motions. I've got a lot of cases dismissed, not even ever having to touch foot in a courtroom because of how aggressive I was with my motions and, fighting for that person. But now I only help innocent people. I know that sounds weird, but if I believe that you didn't do it, I'm fighting and I'm going to win. So I just, I steer away from
So what's very funny about what you just said was, right? I was trying to figure out another way to describe your style. Yeah. The first time me and you, we had did some business. You had did some evictions for us when we first met. Do you remember where we met?
I did, at Huntington.
Okay, at Huntington Bank. Yeah. Dee had introduced us from the car wash. Yeah. And I'm like, I go out my way to support people of color. And when he told me you was an attorney, I'm like, all right, definitely, let me give you a call. And I called you very shortly after, and we started doing business. But what I remember most was the first time of us in a courtroom together, right? Yeah. For a case, and we'll talk about that. And you never told me people called you a bulldog. When I walked out of that courtroom, I told Tiffany, my assistant at that time, she's a bulldog, and I was thinking on my way down here in this interview, well, I don't want to describe her as that. Maybe let me think of another description, okay. But I was in the courtroom in front of the judge and the standing next to you, and you was representing me, the good guy, and I start getting uncomfortable. Like, we might have to tear this joint up. Like, if the judge about to contempt you of court or something, because you was at it. So no, I loved it because obviously you were on my side, but I was, and I'm a bulldog, in business, but I was like, whoa, I'm getting a little uncomfortable. Like, people in the courtroom was like, what? We need her, you know what I mean, representing us, because you was aggressive. I think, was that the time we was in, was it Maple or Garfield?
I think it was Bedford.
Bedford court, and we could talk a little about that case to give people examples of, some of the crap that we have to deal with in this industry and as an investor, because you're a real estate investor too. We'll talk about that, but that particular case, just to give people a quick summary, if we both can remember it properly, I bought a property at the auction, right, downtown. When I purchased the property, it was people occupying the property. The guy had reached out to me. I don't know if you know this part. The guy that owned the property, he reached out after it transferred to me, and it took a month and a half to transfer to me. But after it did, he reached out to me and said, hey, I just found out my property is sold. I wasn't even aware. They wasn't sending the mail to the right address or whatever. And he, at first, because he had called my office at first, right? So my property manager answered, and she was dealing with him, and she was like, Akeem, this guy is aggressive. I think he might be an attorney, but he's very aggressive. He wants his house back. Basically, I need to just deliver it back to him. So he said he doesn't want to deal with me. He doesn't want to deal with peons, sub-lane. He want to only deal with the decision makers, the owner, wow. And I was like, well, look, I'll call him, So I called the guy, and he started telling me that, I'm an investor too. This is how it go. I just let the taxes go behind. I was gonna pay it. That little $30,000, I ain't nothing. I got that in my pocket. I could have paid that, but you know how you do. You let it. I was taking that money and investing on other properties, and I would pay it. And I was like, no, I don't know that game, because that's not the game that I
remember you said
I pay my property taxes.
He was like, we're in the same business, but we don't do business.
We don't do business the same, So he was being real slick, and I'm like, well, look, if you understand business, you understand I have to make money. Give me this, you can have your house back. And then he started battling, and he tricked me into a lease and didn't want to leave, and then stripped the house, so we had to go to court and found out that he was a major con man. This is what he was doing.
That's a really good example of a lot of legal issues that arise from start to finish. So like you said, you bought it from the sheriff's sale. So obviously when you do that, it can't be occupied. And I've got a lot of people, and a lot of them came from you, referrals that, hey, she knows how to handle it when somebody's occupying it. And if it's the prior owner, you can go through the sheriff, and they'll do an eviction. So you don't have to go through the local municipal court. But if it's a non-owner, you have to go through the municipal court. Another issue that came up in that case was the Protecting Tenants at Foreclosure Act. Now, there was at the time that we were involved in that case, it was between where it had, lapsed and to where it actually became a law that didn't have a sunshine provision, which means that at some point it will need to be renewed. Well, now it's permanent law, and which was shocking because President Trump is the one that made it permanent. But what the Protecting Tenants at Foreclosures Act does is that if you're a tenant with a valid lease, then you can't be evicted just because someone bought it at a sale. If your lease is valid and is still in place. But even if your lease is, say for instance, you had a year lease, now you're month to month.
Yeah.
Well, they still can't just kick you out. They have to give you a 30-day notice, terminate the lease agreement, then evict you.
A 30-day notice and then a 3-day notice, right?
Correct. Yeah. Anytime you want to terminate the tenancy, it is a 2-step process. You can do the 2 in 1. However, the 30 days has to lapse and it has to be commensurate with the rental period. So say, for instance, the rent is due on the 1st of the month.
Yes.
Well, you got to serve the notice on the 1st. If you serve it after the 1st, then it's not going to count to the next 30 days. So say April 1st is the periodic rental period.
Yeah.
If you serve it on the 1st or before, the 30 days will have lapsed by May 1st. But if, say, you serve it on the 2nd, 3rd, any day after the 1st, it will not count until June 1st.
All right, hold on. Let's slow down because I got questions.
Yes.
So I know they have questions.
Yes.
And I do this, but you just taught me something new, and I just did it just recently, right? But if someone acquires a property, any type of way, whether it's through foreclosure from another investor, from anyone, and somebody lives in that property.
Yes.
But their intention is to remove that person occupying the property from the premises or the house, right?
Yes.
For whatever plans they have. If that person that was living in the house was not an owner, was not a prior owner of that property, they were just a tenant, and they had a lease that expired.
Yes.
So at that point, they were just on a month-to-month.
Yes.
Exactly what would be the steps to remove that person?
So first, look to the lease. Even though the lease may no longer be
But
in
what
the
if they
term,
don't provide it?
If you don't have a copy of the lease when you bought it,
Okay.
Which brings up another point. Obviously, when you're in the process of buying it, you might want to get that. You might also want to get some tenant estoppels from the prior owner just to confirm with the lease.
Right, if
but
you're buying it from the owner. But for me, if I bought it at the foreclosure, Summit County tax, or regular bank foreclosure auction.
There is a difference. However, I want to stick to the fact pattern you provided, which is that there is a lease that the term is up and they're just month to month.
Yeah.
And whether it was through sheriff's sale or a prior owner, we would treat those people the same in the sense that, again, they're month to month now.
Yeah.
So if you want to terminate that tenancy, then you have to serve a 30-day notice commensurate with the rental period. Now, when it gets tricky is if you don't know when that day is.
Exactly, because some people pay on the 15th or the 10th.
Yeah. So the it's always good to revert back to the 1st because that's just easy.
Yeah.
So even if it were the 15th, the problem would be, one, that if you, first of all, you're going to serve a new owner letter, right? If you start communicating with them and they fail to give you the lease, but then you give them a 30-day notice on the 1st, and they're like, no, my rent is due on the 15th, but they still refuse to give you a copy of the lease. You want to err on the side of caution, right? Because they may come to court. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you serve it on the 1st of April, rent is due on the 15th of April. Come May 1st, that is not going to be a rental period. The 30-day wouldn't be served commensurate with the rental period because it's the 15th. So that you might have to get that person 45 days. So it's really important, to when you're buying a property, if it's not through the sheriff's sale, to make sure that prior owner, your seller, is giving you a copies of all the leases. And if you go through a title company, right, they're going to do that because they want to prorate the rent, things like that.
Yeah, of course.
Always good to go through a title company. But I have people come to me, and I'm not a title company.
Yeah.
But I'm able to search the title.
Yeah.
I'm able to give you some assurances that if I screwed up, I'll make good on it.
Yeah.
But, and I'll do all the things that a title company does. But again, it's good to go through a title company because they're going to do that. And they don't represent anybody. If you come to me, I represent whoever it is that came to me. So.
Yeah. So everything that you just laid out and the process, is that for a residential property and a commercial property?
No.
Okay.
No, not necessarily. First of all, the Protecting Tenants at Foreclosure Act will not apply to commercial. Right? Secondly, there's more likely than not that the owner is not occupying it. But
that's not true all the time.
Right.
I bought a couple.
Yeah, sometimes they're mixed use. Sometimes the owner is the occupant, so they're running the business in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's the owner, you can still go through the sheriff's department, right, to get rid of them. There's a lot of differences with commercial. So first, again, if it's a sheriff's sale or something like that, then more likely than not, if it's the owner, they were a part of the foreclosure, right, and probably, you know, the bank already dealt with them. But once you buy it, if they still there and they haven't gone, then you can evict them through the sheriff's department.
Okay.
If it's a non-owner, you still have to go through the municipal court. And the 3-day notice is in a section of the code that is not related to landlord-tenant, which means that it applies all the time when you're evicting someone, whether it's commercial or residential. So you always have to serve that 3-day. Maybe you don't have to serve the 30-day because the 30-day is only in the landlord-tenant act, and therefore it doesn't apply to commercial. But there's a way to get around the 3-day, but you have to have it in writing. So if you bought something from somebody or you bought it from sheriff's sale, then that person could not have waived that 3-day notice period. But you can do a lockout on a commercial if it's in writing that they waived that 3-day notice. And like I've negotiated lease, I was on the development team for the East Side Market. So I negotiated those leases, and it was interesting during negotiations because I wanted it in. Obviously, I'm representing the occupant, so I want my occupant to not waive their 3-day. But the city wanted to make sure that if they needed to move in, they didn't have to go through the rigmarole of going in court. And, you know, my client essentially, because of the nature of the agreement and that they're bringing something to the community, didn't want to fight over that. You know, like I said, I'm a bulldog, so I'm at the table, like, pressing for it. But ultimately, when it comes to settlement negotiations, things like that, you do err on the side of your client. You advise them of whichever way they go, how the consequences will be, but you can't make that decision for them because for whatever reason, people will decide things that's best for their business or their situation, and I think that's why our rules of professional responsibility don't allow us to control settlement. We advise through it, but we can't control it. Just like I said, I do personal injury. If they offer my client $5,000, I'm like, dude, your claim is worth $1 million. Well, I want this $5,000. I need it now. I've had people do that. I can't press them to get the $1 million. I gotta let them take the $5 and give them some type of letter that I covered myself. You know, but I can't control it. I can't advise, and you know.
So it was something that you had mentioned earlier, which is a document that I'm sure a lot of people don't know. I learned it probably 10 years ago, a Stopover Certificate. I'm very familiar with it. Actually, I'm going through the process right now, buying a commercial property and I had to have all the current tenants. My Clarissa is taking the Stopover certificates over to there where they can fill it out. So basically, it's a form for. But my question is, because I never use it with residential. You use the same form?
Well, not necessarily the same form, but you can use it in any situation because what the tenant estoppel does, or the estoppel certificate does, is it just sort of lays out what the agreement is without actually getting a copy of the agreement. And it also, one thing that's not in the agreement that might be in the estoppel is that, you know, the person isn't behind on the rent or they don't have any claims against the landlord. And so that's important because if you inherit or you buy that property, you inherit all of the bad and good. So if that person is 5 months behind and when you bought it, you know, you didn't ask for the books, you didn't get an estoppel, you didn't know you had a bad tenant, you know, or say for instance, they were, you know, looking to sue the landlord because whatever reason, housing code
violation, or something growing in the basement or whatever.
Now you've inherited that too, so you want to make sure, and you've been doing this a long time, so I'm sure you are the one that does the due diligence. But a lot of the new investors that, you know, are just out here just buying, they don't know a lot of these things, and so when they get these properties, they get a headache, which they could have avoided had they done certain things like an estoppel. Let's talk a little bit more about that because I'm actually going through it right now. We have the estoppel certificate. We got to think 10 back. We got to get another 12 back. But I'm noticing probably from the 10 that I just went through, 50% of the tenants are behind on rent. I mean, they owe this guy anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. Wow.
Well, now I know why he's selling the property. But that's okay. For me, it's going to be hitting a reset. I'm not going to attempt to collect that money. And even if I would, I can't. That's not my right, correct?
No, that's not.
It is? Yeah, but I don't want it.
Okay.
I'm gonna hit the reset on the
Yeah.
tenants. That's gonna be the blessing for the day for them.
Okay.
New ownership, hitting the reset, we starting from scratch.
Yeah.
He can't collect it, right?
No. Once he
Definitely
sells it,
he can't. Okay.
Well, let me just say this. It depends.
Okay.
Right? It depends because there are and I used to hate that answer in law school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there has to be an answer.
Yeah.
But it always depends on the facts. There could be a circumstance under which that the seller could have set something up to where, like, say, for instance, they start suing them before they sold it to you. Their books are in a negative. Mm-hmm. So they can collect that because they rightfully were owed that while they owned it. Now, could they pass that to you? Yeah, a lot of times we use this term in the law called privity of contract.
Okay.
Well, if I buy something and that something is real estate and that something has contracts, as long as the people that I'm dealing with, I give my new owner letter so they know who they're dealing with now, they know that everything they owe him, they now owe me. Again, the good and the bad, you collected.
Yeah.
So if rent was $500, you still owe me $500 rent.
Yeah.
But there are situations where the prior owner could be collecting that money after.
So this is the thing, though, right? He doesn't really. He might have a right, but what is the resolution if they don't pay? He can't evict them.
Well, no, he cannot. He cannot.
What can he possibly do? Let's be real. What can he possibly do?
All he can do is sue them for the money, but he can't evict them.
Yeah, he can't.
He can't. Only the owner can evict. That's a right exclusive to the owner.
So it's nothing. All their leases are expired. There's only one current lease. Everybody else is month to month. They've been expired for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But it's funny that you just said that he can try to collect. So I bought a property from the tax auction, an apartment building one time. And I think, did I get with you on that case?
I think so. There might be the one where there was an issue where maybe the amount.
No, the previous owner was coming back collecting rent on Saturday mornings.
Oh, wow.
Acting like he still owned the property.
Now, that ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't
this
right.
guy, hold on.
Wow.
I got to tell y'all this story. This is hilarious, right? I bought this property at the tax auction. It was an apartment building, right? And it still had probably 5 or 6 people occupying. It was a 12 suite, 11 or 12 suite, right? And it had 5 or 6 people occupying the property. So before, I always start to do my research, my due diligence, talk to as many people before I make a huge purchase like that at the auction, right? It was a tax auction property. So I was spending a lot of time around the property every day. Right. So I seen the property manager, the guy that was there every day, talk to him, and I'm like, this property is for sale, right? It's about to go up through the top. Oh, I've heard that before. This guy's not he's not gonna lose it. And I'm gonna be real. He was the property man was a black guy.
Okay.
And just because the owner was white, there's no way he's gonna lose his property. He got too much money. You know how many times this property went through that process and he never lost it before. Right. You're wasting your time. That's what he told me. I said, okay. He might not owe this much now as he now is before he was, but whatever the case, it's going up tomorrow. So he like, all right. So it went up, I bought it. I didn't say anything until the judge confirmed it, signed over it to me. So I went back on the scene and said, hey, remember me? I bought the property. I own it now. Right. Oh, I don't believe that. Let me make a call. So he called the guy, and the guy kind of heard him on the phone like, I'm on my way down there. So I sat there and waited. He didn't show up. 2-3 hours. So after I left, he showed up, but he must have seen me there. Okay. So he didn't come on the scene. So I left. And as soon as I left, one of the tenants, I came back the next day, and the tenant said, as soon as you pulled off, he pulled up. I said, for real? So I said, all right, y'all don't pay me any rent because I'm the new owner. Right. But they didn't really believe me. They but I had to print it out. I had my property manager print it out on the county orders and show the transfer of ownership, right? But they don't know what that means. I could have made that myself, right? And I understand to a certain degree. So that's why I wanted to make sure I'm there when he's there. Right. And get that introduction from him, right? Right. And see, was he going to play fair? Right. Right? So 3 or 4 days we played this cat and mouse game, right? Until one day, I just so happened I was riding by and he was on the scene. He had a little office in the corner of the building downstairs. Okay. And I jumped out. White guy in that neighborhood, it had to be him. So I jumped out like, hey, I forgot his name, Brian or whatever. He like, maybe I can see the hesitancy. I'm like, King, I'm the new owner.
Right.
Why are you still coming down to the property?
Right.
So the property manager was there, and it was so funny because he tried this. He kind of brushed him off. He didn't want him to know. He like, yeah, I've been waiting to talk to you. I've been trying to meet you. I'm like, I've given you my number. I sent you text. Like, what are you talking about? I left you voicemail. Well, let me talk to you in the office. I'm like, okay. So when his property manager was coming, he's like, no, you stay out. So we went in the office. I sat down at his desk. He leaned back in the chair and kicked his feet up on his desk and said, hey, I know how this goes. I respect that you bought it. How much is it going to cost to buy the property back? I think I told my son about this. How much is it going to cost me to buy the property back? I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to tell you, Brian. I've been spending some time over here at this property, and I'm just not all about money. I'm an investor in the community. I'm about community development. And just so happen I make money, right? But it has to be a little bit of both. This building is a bad representation in our neighborhood, in our community, because this is where I'm from, right? You're treating these people like crap. And he went on to explain, you don't know, you must not own properties. They're just going to tear your stuff up and this and that. I'm saying, hold up. Wow. You give people something they can be proud of, and they'll take care of it. But if you give them crap, they're going to treat it like crap. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Right. It starts from here with you as the owner. Right. He said, you don't know. I said, well, I do this. This is not my first property, and I'll show you, but I can tell you. So at this point, I don't feel comfortable selling the property back to you. Right. He was like, what? What are you talking about?
This is why I like representing. He the good guy.
Yeah. I'm like, well, he couldn't understand it. I said, Brian, this is what I'm gonna tell you. I'm the owner of the property. Whatever you got in here right now, you need to remove it. Don't let me catch you back down here again, right? So he thought it was a game. He was like, you serious? I'm like, you can get your feet off my desk. Right. But if you want the desk, you can take it with you, but you got to take it now. Right? He was stunned. So he walked out, and his property manager was out there. I was like, oh, Brian, don't forget to tell him that I am the new owner. Right. And he just mumbled and drove away. So that was like on a Friday. So it was the first of the month. Mm-hmm. I got down there, sat, my property manager called me. Like, I came down here to talk to the tenants. They said, Brian been down here collecting rent. Wow. So he had collected maybe $2,000 or $3,000, but what pissed me off, he had took rent from a lady that it gave him a security deposit and first month's rent, but she was having a baby. So she had to be rushed to the hospital. Wow. She had never moved into the property. He was supposed to be getting the property together. So, and the money, half of the money came from some type of assistance program with the Catholic Charities or church or something. Wow. So they're calling me. I'm like, well, he has the money. I can't give you the unit, and he got the money. This dude wouldn't return the money. I finally got him on the phone, had to call him from a different number. I said, listen, all that other rent you collected, keep it. Right. We're not even going to battle about that. You need it more than I do, right? But the money that you took from this pregnant lady, you need to go put that back in her hands. Right. I don't even want to give it back to her. Wow. You know what I mean? Because, come on, man, can you live with yourself? Like, you've been sucking this community dry and having these people live like this for all these years, and you're going to do this? But it was crazy. But with a situation like that, I know I could have called you and got more with the legal, but I was like, this guy kind of pissed me off. I'm going to keep it on the street level. That's
what I like about Black Powerful Men. When you're the man with the plan, I don't care. Like, we, as a people, Black men like you, like your son, like, y'all the leaders in our community. And if we get more Black men like you and the people that you run with to do what you do, we could be able to take back our community.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. You know I'm on it. That's what I'm all about. I'm about the money too, don't get me wrong, but it feels extra special when I can make money and do good at the same time. Making money is good, doing good is good, but making money and doing good is a beautiful thing. Absolutely. So that combination, I've been blessed that majority of my deals I've been able to do that. Yeah,
I think I learned a little bit from you too about, like, my partner, he's a perfectionist too. And when we take on a project, we have one we're doing on 188th, and I mean, this thing was bad.
Okay.
It had been occupied for about 12 years.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you go in and you could put lipstick on the pig. You can try to, you know, just throw something together. But I don't care if it's on 188th or, you know, if it's in Westlake. We want to make sure that we giving a good product.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
especially
of course.
our people.
Yeah,
you know what
for
I'm
sure,
saying?
for
so
sure.
I
Yeah,
respect
that's what it's
that about
about.
you, and I think I've learned that from, you know, black men that have integrity.
Yeah,
There's a lot
for sure.
It ain't it's a lot of us out there, but it's a couple of bad apples.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
definitely.
saying?
It's
That'll spoil it for the bunch.
Yeah,
and you know, you don't get sometimes the credit when we're doing good like that.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I do 99% of my deals in 3 black nights for a reason. I'm sure you've met so many investors. They got this LLC, this LLC, this LLC. There's a reason they're doing that. You know what I mean? Because they're leaving some crap behind to go with that LLC. And 99% of my deals, I do it under my company name. I wear that brand like a badge of honor. Yeah. So give us an idea of some more interesting, because obviously, you know, this is for, you know, investors, potential investors that haven't really stuck their foot in it yet, business owners, small entrepreneurs. Give us, you know, another example of something that happens very often.
Yeah, I think I was just speaking to your son about this before we started, and that is failure to disclose.
Okay.
Right? So one of the reasons why we want to do it right is because we don't want to sell somebody a product in real estate that when they buy it, it's a bunch of surprises. Your basement is flooding, you know, or something is falling, you know, down in the ceiling or something like that. And so anything that we run into when we're doing this job in rehabbing properties, we want to fix, and we don't want to just put lipstick on the pig.
Okay.
So as an attorney, I've often had to go after people. I have a few cases pending now where there's some failure to disclose. So for instance, a particular case I'm handling now, a nice neighborhood, very expensive home, and you know, the person that purchased it worked hard to get where they are in life.
So it's a homeowner.
It's a homeowner.
Okay.
Yeah,
and they bought it from another homeowner or from an investor?
Let's say the person was an investor.
Okay.
Because those facts are still coming to you know, surface.
Okay.
But I do believe, based on what we've discovered so far, that the seller was not an occupant.
Okay.
However, that person knew that these things were going on there. And if they didn't know, they should have known.
Okay.
And there's just no way they didn't know.
Were they living in the house?
They weren't living there.
Okay.
But so, for instance, this person has a huge backyard,
okay.
right? So the backyard ponds every time it rains heavy. So there's no way that your tenant didn't, either you occupied it and you knew, or your tenant occupied it and they told you.
Right.
There's no way that you're having ponding occur in your backyard. Then that is, you know, penetrating into your basement.
Yeah.
Causing flooding in your basement, and you as the owner didn't know whether you occupied it or not. So I believe that we'll be able to show that there was knowledge of the issue.
Okay.
So what this person did when they sold it, though, is that they filled out the property disclosure forms as, you know, is required by law. But when they filled them out, now on the one hand, they could have left it blank. That would have been like an obvious failure to disclose, maybe.
Yeah.
But they put something on there. And the something they put on there didn't talk about the ponding in the backyard.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about the real issue. Because you have ponding in the backyard caused by the storm drain system not working properly. It wasn't done in the first place, right? And, you know, on the one hand, you wish you could sue the city, but we know municipalities and government entities have immunity.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to get around that immunity.
I didn't know that, though. You just taught me something.
Yeah.
So when they come out and do their inspection report, and they miss something major, and the homeowner buys, you can't go after the city.
Not necessarily. So in my research, and not, you know, when I research, it's like tons and tons of pages. I don't want to try to act like I remember every little thing I read. But the thing that stuck out to me is that the city is liable for a failure to maintain. For instance, say, you know, the street is really bad. Yeah. People are complaining. Hey, you know, the street is bad. I mean, we know in Cleveland we run into that a lot, right? So who's job is it to maintain our roads? It's the city.
Yeah.
So when they fail to maintain something, then maybe they could be liable.
Oh,
but just for a design defect, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if you're, you know, in this particular instance, the storm drain system is not designed correctly.
Yeah.
Now the city didn't construct that property, but they took in the, you know, the inspection reports. They went out there, you know, all the permits. They know what the plan was. The plan was submitted to them, but something was missing when it actually was done, and that was the additional storm drain system that would have taken away that water that causes ponding in that backyard.
Okay.
But that didn't happen, right? So we got a couple of, you know, owners later. Well, just because you inherit something don't mean it ain't your problem, and it is your problem, and you have to disclose that when you sell it. If you fail to disclose, now you open yourself up to liability.
Yeah, right.
So you have negligence in, you know, these instances where it's like, I really didn't know, but you failed to kind of do something. But then you have like actual knowledge of something. And so you have like misrepresentation, failure to disclose, which is the crux of fraud when you're dealing with these kinds of situations. And with the benefit of being able to do fraud, because in a contract, you can't really get attorney's fees unless it's written in there. However, if the person commits fraud or some other wrongdoing, you can get attorney's fees. So that's the big difference. And you don't want it to be negligent, you know, misrepresentation. You want it to be direct knowledge that you can claim fraud. Then you can get your attorney's fees back, you know. And probably some punitive damages, because punitive damages are exactly what they sound like. It punishes the wrongdoer. It's not a criminal thing, but it's you're gonna hit them where it hurts in their pockets for the wrong that they've done. And so that's a case that was really interesting, because again, the disclosures, they mentioned something. They say, oh, you know, it was a flood in the basement. I fixed it. It was caused by a septic system. But in reality, it wasn't the septic system. It was the storm drain. And in reality, it wasn't flood in the basement, and they said it was caused by act of God. Well, an act of God is something like literally out of your control.
Yeah,
if one were to state in a disclosure form that an act of God caused a flood, you would imagine that was a one-time thing, right? You wouldn't believe that it would continue. Right? So when you bought it, you would have assumed it was fixed. And if you got a reasonable inspection came through, they say, yeah, the basement was fixed, everything's fine. But then when you buy it, you get this really big flood in your backyard, beautiful backyard. You didn't plan to be fishing out there, or swimming, or you know, like you plan to have access to your backyard.
Of course.
But you can't now because it's always ponding, and then that ponding causes flooding into your basement. But then the question becomes, well, what's the new owner's responsibility? Can they just sue and say, I'm gonna just wait till I get money in court, and I ain't gonna do nothing till I get my money? Not necessarily, because there is a duty to mitigate your damages. So I would say that the most that person should do is waterproof their basement, so that they don't keep having water come and flood in their basement. But to have to spend $100,000 to fix the storm drain system, probably something that is unreasonable for one to assume you should do to mitigate your damages. So it has to be something reasonable, but you can't just throw your hands up if it's something that you can do. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I think I run into a lot, and that's why people like you, I think, even if you didn't know, you wanted to give a good product.
Of course.
Some people don't care. They just want to sell it. They have put lipstick on a pig, but be very aware, you know, that if it's something you know about that property, that the next owner inherits, that you didn't tell them, you open yourself up for liability.
I actually had an incident while you were talking. I thought about it, a house that I sold in Twinsburg maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago. I bought the property. At that time, I was doing a bunch of properties at, 20, 25 properties, full renovations every year. And I bought this property, and I really couldn't get to it. So I was like, when the crew, or when the day it rained, I would have them go over there and work on the property. I was just kind of fitting it in. But I remember one of the things I did do, I had to put a roof on the property, right? So I hired this company, a roofing company, and just so happened, thank God, I made sure that they were licensed and bonded. I had them go pull a permit from the city. They put a roof on there, and then I demoed the house, I might have did the floors, and then I just got overwhelmed with bigger projects, right? So I ended up selling the property to another investor, made a couple dollars, let him go in there and finish the property. He went in, totally renovated it, sold it. 2 years later, at least 2 years later, the current homeowner reached out. They had an attorney reach out saying that the roof wasn't installed properly. I don't remember exactly what was going on, but it wasn't installed properly. So I had to, and I don't know if I had to, you tell me, but just on who I am, I did the research and said, hey, I can give you the company's name to actually install the roof for me. But, that was like 2 years ago. I don't think I'm liable, but I'll help you out with the information. But I know the roofer that I used, they were licensed and bonded. I had them go pull a permit at Twinsburg. And they did, and they followed up. And next thing you know, the contractors called me. Hey, you gave these people my information?
Absolutely.
Of course I did. You didn't install the roof right, and it's not going to come on me. It's going to come on you. They're trying to go after my bond and this and that. That's your business. You know what I mean? Like, you're a professional. I paid you the price that you gave me. I installed it. So that's a lesson to all these so-called investors out here that's trying to cut corners. And listen, I understand to a certain degree, especially starting off, cutting corners, it becomes something you do to a certain degree in certain things. But what I learned, me personally, a conscious decision I made, I don't cut corners when it comes to anything electrical. Nothing. I don't cut corners when it comes to anything dealing with gas. I don't do it. I don't cut corners when it comes to anything that, I can't sleep good. Am I going to cut corners in terms of, maybe the landscaping? Instead of using a nicer bush, I'm going to use a cheaper bush, or, a certain mulch, I'm going to use the free stuff just for presentation. I'm not going to use the good stuff that's going to last 2 years. I'm going to use the stuff when it rained a couple of times, it's going to change the color. Yeah, maybe. But early on, I used to do that. Obviously you make a certain level of money. Now but you're not thinking about that early. But when it comes to electrical, plumbing, gas, I don't cut corners, and you have to decide what are you going to cut corners on, the things that can come back and bite you in your butt. Now, is that something, 2 years later? Because I used to, when I used to be working on properties, I used to physically work on properties too early on. And I used to sell my property so quick with my realtors that sometime the new homeowner will be coming through and they'll see me out there. Oh, he must be the owner or whatever. And a year later, I'm seeing them at Sam's Club and they like, hey, my toilet is running. The house I bought from you, my toilet is stopped up or is running. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You blasting me out in Sam's Club about a toilet from a year ago? What are you talking about? So that's crazy. But little things like that, I can't disclose that because I don't know. I didn't live in the property. So it's only a certain level of disclosures that you can,
absolutely
can do.
You put a lot of meat on the bone there. So first thing that you did right is get a licensed and bonded contractor, right? Yeah. Second thing you did right is that they pulled permits. So now you've created some things that you can go back to, right? So that's just it right there as far as how to get started, making sure that your renovation goes right. Get licensed and bonded contractors, make sure they pull permits. Yes. Because if something does go wrong, you just put a new roof on there, there's no way that roof ain't done right. Especially if... I'm not a roofer at all. And the city, I'm doing a house right now in Warrensville. They came back out to that house, I don't know how many times about that roof. Little stuff like more snow guard or whatever. It's like, really? And they did a certain level of inspection on their part. Right. Now the city can't be liable for that. They can't. That was a question I wanted to ask. They can't be liable for not catching what that contractor did or didn't do. However, that contractor definitely. Let me ask you this real quick, before I forget, because I had a situation that I was doing a garage, right, in Macedonia, and the contractor pulled the permit. Everything was okay. I was out of town during almost the whole process. When the brick guys came out in to put in the foundation of the garage, before they can build on it, the city had to come back out to sign off on it to make sure it was right. Well, guess what? He didn't. He called the contractor and said, "Don't worry about it.
I know you're working for 3 Black Knights, and he knows what he's doing, so I know you know what you're doing.
Wow.
I found this out later.
Right.
It wasn't done right. We had to tear the whole thing back out. When my Amish crew went out to go build on it, they refused to build on it.
When I was researching the issue with this property, and I wanted the city to be liable, first of all, that is an extremely convoluted area of law, like the municipal liability and the immunity part of it.
Yeah.
Because at what point does it, like, it's clear when it's, a failure to maintain, right? That seems much more clear. When it's an issue where you have like a dereliction of duty, like where this inspector just failed to go out, that becomes more complicated to figure out, did they do something wrong? So I shouldn't say, a hard no that the city isn't liable. It really is going to depend on, what the requirements were, things like that. I would want the city to be liable in a situation like that because you just clearly didn't even go out there.
Right.
But that's something, again, like I said, when I was researching, it was so many different like nuances to that area of law that was something like if somebody called me about that, I would say give me a couple of days because I want to go look back at this because when you read when you're researching the law, sometimes there's so many different issues, but one relates to what you need at that moment, so that sticks with you. And at the time I was researching the issue of, municipal liability a couple months ago, the main thing I wanted to know is if they could be liable for the storm drain thing, and I found that they couldn't because it wasn't an issue of failure to maintain. But in this situation where you have an inspector that doesn't even do their job, that's something that I would want to go back and hope that in all of those nuances that's one that they could be liable for because it just seems like they just clearly dropped the ball there, especially when it wasn't done right.
They never even came to the scene. I found out later. He never even came out. He just talked to the contractor and told him, go forward, you're good. And I paid him because I was out of town.
Wow.
I cashed out him thinking, if the inspector okayed it, it must be good. And cashed out him and he was gone. So I just took a loss on it. I didn't even, it was crazy. I had to keep it moving.
Getting back to one of your other questions, like how long do you have to sue? So outside of like making it, relate to any situation. Negligence is a 2-year statute of limitations. Okay. Fraud is for contracts is even more time, right? So in real estate, typically a contract is mostly like a purchase agreement. You got a contract with the contractor. Yeah. But as it relates to buyer and seller, the purchase agreement is your contract, and then that all merges into the deed, and the deed can either be quit claim, limited warranty, or warranty, right? And so we know what a quit claim is. Yes. You can't come after me for nothing. Yeah. Limited warranty is like, okay, during your ownership, but then, general warranty is like everything, but it doesn't relate to defects in the property. At all? It only relates to the
actual title. To the actual title work.
So
liens and different things.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to be looking at a statute of limitations for either fraud, because of misrepresentation or failure to disclose knowingly, or negligence, negligent misrepresentation. So that could be the situation where you kind of did everything you could, but you couldn't have known. But there was something maybe that you might have should have known. Yeah. And should have known ain't knowing. Yeah. So we got to be really careful of the verbiage that we use. Like when I'm writing a complaint, I'm probably going to lean towards hoping that I can prove knowing. Yeah. And, it depends on the circumstances. I'm going to probably take the chance when I know my evidence is good on knowing to not say, should have known. Because if you say they should have known, that's negligence. Yeah. And, but yes, 2-year statute of limitations for negligence 4. So if you sold a property 4 years ago, then depending on exactly when that 4 years comes, because we get down to the date, in the law, you might be able to be sued for fraud. But if it's negligence and 3 years go by, they can't come after you. Yeah. However, again, being a good guy, you're not going to say, screw you, it's been 2 years. You're going to say, hold on, I did my due diligence, made sure my contractor was licensed and bonded, they pulled permits. If they screwed up a brand new roof, then we're going to attack their bond. And I've had to do that in commercial settings. Like one of my big clients, they had a contractor come through, they just were doing renovations. Yeah. And they got at a point where... and this is a good thing about when you get into big contracts. Like you have a architect, right? They're going to do blueprints. Yeah. And that's what is supposed to happen. The contractor is going to follow that to the T. Yes. Right? And if they don't, they agreed that that's what they were going to do. In this situation, was interesting because it went through a whole process. You had the bidding part, everything was disclosed, but it seems as though these people, the contractor as well as their attorney, just it's like, oh, it's too many pages, I'm just not going to read it. So as being a young Black woman, I always make sure that I cross all my T's and dot all my I's because I'm already at a disadvantage. I'm a solo practitioner.
Yes.
I'm Black and I'm female and I'm young.
Yeah.
So people are less likely to respect that you at their level.
Yeah.
And so they're going to come in probably with their guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
Which ain't a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, of course, right.
Because I'm reading every page.
Yeah.
Because I know that I can't go off of being white, or being a man, or having a whole lot of experience behind me, or having a lot of other people that I deal with. I'm solo.
Yeah.
So in this particular instance, the contractor didn't really read a lot of things. Like, when can you work? How are you supposed to work? What are you supposed to do when you dispose of the debris and things like that?
Yeah.
And they were just doing it haphazardly, however they thought they should, not realizing that this was a sophisticated commercial real estate. Like the owner, they own multiple, things. They're like a big company.
Yeah.
So they definitely dotted all their I's, crossed their T's. They had one of the, really, really good architects. Black man, by the way, because it's a Black business.
I'm sure I know him.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like, just do your due diligence. Like, don't cut corners.
Yeah.
If you're a contractor, if you're doing a big commercial deal, read it.
Yeah.
I had another situation. These guys, I saw them do another commercial deal. Did everything right, but it was a bidding process. So, of course, there was some documents in place. Well, then they did like a smaller job. Smaller as in it was like a $20,000 job.
Yeah.
Well, when they tried to sue, they didn't have no contract. They had no pictures. They had no permits. I'm like, I know you guys do good work because I've seen you on a couple of other big projects. But I guess you thought because this one's so small, we're going to, never do that because the small one is the one you didn't get paid on.
That's the
you
one
tried
that
to
killed
sue.
you. Yeah.
So you went from maybe could have got $20,000 to your lawyer is like, you better settle for this $3,000.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming in like, oh no, the statute of frauds applies and all this sort of stuff, And what is the statute of frauds? Well, it is just what the law puts in place to make sure contracts are signed under certain situations. So and the funny thing with real estate is, well, we might assume a contractor is a service provider.
Yeah.
But there's times that it could be actually a goods contract, right?
Yeah, of course, right. Yeah.
So, and I always give the example of the in-ground or above-ground pool, right? Because one is a service contract. One is goods.
Yeah.
The difference in the two is that, well, with goods over a certain amount, it has to be in writing. Not the same necessarily with a service contract. And there are defenses to the statute of frauds, like partial performance. If you perform like way more than enough of the deal, maybe you can defend, say, that, unjust enrichment, things like that. But at the end of the day, put it in writing because it didn't hurt you. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, put it all in writing. Everything.
Yeah.
Especially with friends.
Yes, you'll fall out with a friend quicker than a stranger,
man,
because they thinking like, you know me, you're supposed to play me like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Nah.
So one thing I know is a big issue. We can talk all day, you know, especially, and I'm learning something. So I love it. Any day I can learn something new, but I know a lot of investors and homeowners and, not homeowners, but property owners are dealing with what's going on with this whole eviction process and everything. That's big right now. Can I evict? Can I not evict? Let's talk about that. What's the situation for real estate investors out there, commercial and residential, with the current moratorium?
Okay. So
please explain.
There are two things that are going on. There is the federal moratorium through the CARES Act.
Yes.
And then there's the CDC that issued an order, right? Which just recently I was listening to NPR and they were saying that they're trying to, at least here in Ohio they did it, where they're trying to make that the CDC can't issue orders, right? related to all this COVID stuff.
Right.
But
So when you said the CDC, you're
but that's
talking
the federal,
about you're
on the
talking
federal
about
level.
the disease and
the Centers for Disease.
Yeah, disease and control.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So the federal moratorium through the CARES Act doesn't allow a person to evict, like, period. Like, you can't even put the paperwork together and try if you have a federal lien on your property. So,
all right. So
FHA,
when you say that, all right, a FHA loan,
Mhm.
all right, any
federally
FHA or federally backed loan,
yeah,
okay.
or if you got Section 8 in there. So anyway, the thing about the federal government is pursuant to like the 11th Amendment of the Constitution, states preserve their rights.
Yeah, right. I got that.
So with that being said, where the federal government is able to really regulate at the state level is they use what we call the power of the purse, right? So
power of a purse?
Power of the purse. So they
Power
got the
of the
money.
purse. Okay.
They got the money, right?
Okay.
So it's like, okay, we backed all of these loans. We giving you this money for these tenants. We can control something about that relationship because we got a relationship with you as the owner. Not necessarily that they're regulating the state or the city, but they're regulating that property that they have loaned on.
Yes.
So if you got an FHA federally backed loan, or you got any federal monies that are tied to that property, you can't even put the paperwork together. Like, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Now, there are all of these programs out here. We got Cleveland Housing Network. They got a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody just got 10 more million.
Yeah.
10 more million for assistance, rental assistance.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's ways for tenants to be able to pay. But unfortunately, if you got that fairly black loan, they're probably going to be at the bottom, of the totem pole. They're going to be at the back of the line because people that can evict, that are actually filing evictions, if that tenant didn't pay, they're going to be pushed to the front of the line when that eviction come up so that they can get that money and not get evicted. So, it's a catch-22 to it. But again, any federally backed loans or any federal dollars that are being distributed to you on that property are probably going to implicate the CARES Act, the federal moratorium on evictions, and you can't even put the paperwork together. But then you got the CDC Declaration. So your house free and clear.
Yes.
You own it. You ain't Section 8.
Yes.
You don't have Section 8 tenants.
Right.
You know that, like in the city of Cleveland, they have an affidavit you have to fill out.
Yes.
If you could check all those boxes and at the end you're a no, meaning that you have no implications, then you can go for it. You can file.
Okay.
But then the tenant now has, the CDC Declaration that they can file. And with that declaration, though, that's an affidavit. They have to affirm certain facts. One of which is that they sought out assistance. So if you got a tenant that just refused, like, I'm not applying for CHN, I ain't taking your call, because they have this assumption in their head that you can't evict them anyway. They will be surprised. But in the city of Cleveland, which is it's one of the most tenant-friendly cities I've seen, and I practice in Columbus and all of the different municipal courts in Cuyahoga County, and they are the most tenant-friendly. So
for sure.
Not only do they have the right to counsel, but legal aid is like frequent flyer in their court. Like, they're going to be there. So in city of Cleveland, first of all, again, back to the point, you can file the eviction. You don't have that. The CARES Act doesn't apply. Now you file the eviction. Well, that tenant, if they got children, they're probably going to get legal aid.
Yes.
Because there's a program that's been, and it's a codified ordinance in the city of Cleveland that you have a right to counsel.
Yes.
Which was never the case except if you were facing, your liberty was at jeopardy. You could go to jail. I mean, even minor misdemeanors, you don't have a right to counsel because you can't go to jail on a minor misdemeanor. But getting back to the point, again, they can do that. They go to legal aid. Every case I filed currently during the pandemic, my client, because I typically represent the owner, have gotten that money from CHN right away. Legal aid is not sitting back saying, oh, here's the CDC Declaration and throwing up their hands. What they're doing is really pushing these people through, making sure that they apply for the CHN, making sure that the owner gets the money, and the eviction gets dismissed. But you can file as long as you don't have any federal monies back in that property. And if you do file, the CDC declaration can be filed. But most likely what I'm seeing happening is that you're getting your money that you were owed, and everybody's happy now. I don't think people own properties unless you have some other reason that you don't want to occupy. You want to occupy, you want those people paying.
Yeah. It's blowing my mind. Just in the last 6 months, I received at least $30,000 in rental assistant income for tenants that just filled out their paperwork and did it.
Right.
You know, but it blows my mind even more that I got 2 tenants specifically that we know about that just refuse to file for assistance. They like, you can't evict me. I'm going to sit here.
Ignorance.
And when you can, I'm going to leave, but I'm not filling out nothing.
That's ignorance.
I'm like, okay.
Because if they get to court, because not only, like, we could challenge that.
Yeah,
you know, we could ask for a hearing to challenge it. And if we can prove that you lack veracity and you're filling out the CDC declaration and you lied, or you just didn't do some of the things you say you did, which is, again, lying, then that CDC declaration is not going to apply.
And we have the situation coming up. We're filing on it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, hopefully they get legal aid, and legal aid. See, that's what sometimes I like about going up against attorneys and not pro se, because they understand the law and they have certain level of integrity that they're going to try to make sure that things are handled a certain way. Sometimes when you deal with pro se's, one, they're ignorant in the law, but two, especially if they see me, they like, oh, this little girl, you know, with like, so they get a little, you know, they start pounding their chest thinking like, I'm going to say some slick shit and, you know, excuse my language and I'm going to be able to, you know, but at the end of the day, that's not going to happen. Okay. You know, you never know who it is on the other end. So just make sure you do the right thing, tenants and landlords included, because I've had to defend some landlords that I'm like scratching my head, but I can't. As if I get hired for you, I'm a hired gun. I can't, you know, I can't not do my job just because I don't like how you doing your business, you know, or I just got to get off the case. But I might not agree with everything they're doing, but, you know.
So, like I said, we can go on and on and on, but I think we've given the people a lot of information. If they want more information, if they want to contact you, if they want to hire you for your services, give them a little more information about that with you.
Okay, so unfortunately I'm not on social media. However, if you want to contact me about any legal issues, again, my name is Jazmine Greer. You can reach me at 216-218-0112. For those that don't want to talk but just want to write an email, you can email me at j.greer, Greer, at Greer Law Firm, Ohio, ohio.com. And hopefully anyone that's listening that wants some help, you'll give me a call. And
now, how does it work with consultation? Do you I know a lot of attorneys, they'll give you the first 30 minutes or the hour free consultation, or some don't. You know, you got to pay for that. How does it work? Because you're going to get a lot of people that there's going to be reaching out. They got all these questions.
Yeah, well, a phone call is free. You know, if I'm available, I'm going to take your call and I'm going to talk like we've been talking for free. If if I have to meet you in person, my consultation fee is $250, but I always make sure that goes toward whatever. So say, for instance, you end up hiring me, the fee is $1,500. Well, now you only owe $1,250 because I'm going to make sure that money isn't just for the consultation if you move forward. But we all want to make sure that we're, the Bible says a laborer is worthy of their craft. So I've been doing this 12 years. I got student loans, and money has to be exchanged for the service. However, I always try to make sure that, again, from East Cleveland, I didn't grow up hiring lawyers, but I am one now. I like to, help people. But like Akeem said, we definitely still have to make money. So,
for sure. Hey, listen, every time I see you, I just thank God I haven't been to eviction court in probably 7 years since we've been doing business.
Yeah.
I've had cases that went to eviction court, but I didn't have to be there because of you. So, and that's the beautiful thing for me. So, all right, again, I appreciate you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming to the Black Table Talks.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Anytime.
All right.